They're gonna laugh at me.
What? Why would they laugh at you?
And you know they're gonna laugh at me. They're all gonna laugh at you.
Laughing at you.
I'll get to meet new people.
They're all gonna laugh at you!
Welcome back to Small Town Sports History as we continue our journey looking into the history of the University of Mary football team. Sit back and enjoy our journey back to the spring of 1991 as we begin the second part of a four-part series on the University of Mary Marauder football team. Jim Driscoll surprised the local fan base in the spring of 1991 and returned to Northern Michigan to become their defensive coordinator once again. In enters Tom Shea, who previously coached at Dakota State and Peru State, winning the NAIA Division II championship in 1990 with Peru State. He had a previous head coaching record of 47 wins, 32 losses, and 2 ties. With a new head coach would also come a new offense to Bismarck, the air raid system. The 1991 season would see the Marauders finish 3-2 in the NDCAC and overall finish with a 7-2 record. The UMary Air Raid offense would lead the charge as the Marauders not only started to consistently win games, but they were also starting to gauge the interest of the local fan base. Oh, and that rivalry with Mayville State, it never really developed. As the Marauders were turning the corner, the missing piece was putting up historic high school numbers, but we'll return to him later. Now we see the Marauders heading into the 1992 season with a glaring hole at the quarterback position. Little did they know, their answer to their quarterback problems lay right on their roster with a redshirt sophomore from Regent, North Dakota, Todd Sheldon. Sheldon had previously won a high school state football championship and was a standout athlete in basketball, baseball, and track from the small town that boasted a population of 268. Sheldon previously had stints behind center in 90 and 91, but after a 1-2 start with a tie to Montana Western, Sheldon would be the catalyst to the most successful run in the University of Mary football history. UMary would rebound from a conference opening loss behind the strong play of Sheldon and clinch a share of their first ever NDCAC title. But even after a late season reversal of a previous loss, that would not be enough to boost the Marauders high enough in the national ratings to qualify for the playoffs. The 93 season would see the Marauders continue their upward trend with Sheldon under center. The Marauders would open their season with a 3-1 non-conference record heading into their conference opener against Dickinson State, who Mary has never beaten at this point. The Marauders would defeat the Blue Hawks finally for their first victory in the series. Their only non-conference blemish this season would come with a 3-point loss to Minot State, but they would soon have their opportunity for revenge. The Marauders qualified for the playoffs for the first time in history, and they would face the Beavers, led by senior quarterback Josh Duhamel. Yes, that Josh Duhamel. UMary would earn their first ever playoff win with a 31-20 victory in which their do-it-all running back Bobby Wagner would lead the way. Next, in the quarterfinal round, the Marauders hosted Texas school Hardin Simmons and would fall by the score of 30-20, ending their season with an 8-3 record. Although Mary would be hit hard by graduation, including NDCAC MVP Bobby Wagner, who set UMary single-season rushing records in 1993 that still stand today, reinforcements would arrive soon. The Marauders would recruit 2 program cornerstones this offseason, first signing former Bismarck St. Mary's standout Steve Cluton, who previously started for 2 seasons at NCAA Division I University of Wyoming, starting 19 of 23 games on the defensive line, accumulating 82 tackles and 5 sacks in his 2 seasons as a Cowboy. During this time, there was a recruiting battle brewing. A gunslinging quarterback from Pioneer High School in Santa Rosa, California, was putting up historic numbers and was on an unpredictable pathway that would leave the under-recruited standout to sit out a year after his high school career ended. Then he suited up for 1 season of junior college football before packing his bags and, surprising to area schools, would depart for a small NAIA college in Bismarck, North Dakota. The 1994 season would be a season of what-ifs for the University of Mary. They started the season with a quarterback battle between senior incumbent Todd Sheldon and junior transfer quarterback Paul Cronin. Cronin would go on to win the competition and would ingrain himself as the starting quarterback. But the injury bug would bite the Marauders in '94, with the Marauders losing All-American defensive tackle Jason Amon, 2 starting running backs, and also losing their highly recruited quarterback in Todd Sheldon's little brother, Scott, who was also a decorated athlete for Regent and was the Marauders' quarterback of the future. At the time, he was playing wide receiver and suffered a knee injury, making his first and only catch of his career as a true freshman. Scott would later return to the basketball court, but not the football field for the Marauders. Even with standout seasons from Bob Brusfin and Paul Cronin, they were not able to overcome the injury bug and would finish the season third in conference play with a 3-2 conference and a 6-3 overall record. The 95 Marauders returned with confidence, with All-American Jason Amon returning from injury, quarterback Paul Cronin looking to build on his successful campaign, and also had a solid running back in Eric Chin. In addition, Mary boasted one of the top kickers in the nation, in Jeremy Polson, who was also recruited by Utah and Colorado State out of high school. Mary started hot, winning all 4 non-conference games by an average of 28.5 points per game. Cronin and company kept rolling with a 4-0 start in conference play to set up a premier national matchup between 2 8-0 teams. And staring the Marauders in the eye in their 9th game of the season was their largest hurdle, Hank Bijou and his DSU Bluehawks. Mary came up short for the 7th time in 8 games against Dickinson State, and once again, Bijou got the best of UMary. Mary wouldn't have to wait long for an opportunity for revenge, as they faced Bijou's Bluehawks once again in the first round of the playoffs. Dickinson State clung to a late 8-6 lead in the 4th quarter, but it was time for Paul Cronin to put his stamp on UMary history. Cronin led the Marauders on a touchdown scoring drive in which Cronin used his arms and legs to lead the Marauders down the field. Eric Chin would put the Marauders up with a 3-yard touchdown late in the game, and the Bluehawks had one last chance but couldn't convert a 4th down Hail Mary. Behind a strong game by Chin, the Marauders would defeat the Bluehawks 14-8 and would also go on in the next round to defeat number 2 ranked Sioux Falls to set up a national semifinal game against Central Washington, who was led by future NFL quarterback John Kitna. Stopping Kitna would be the key to a Marauder victory. The quarterback threw for 12,000 yards and 99 touchdowns in his 4-year career at Central Washington. His senior season would be his best, setting school records throwing for 4,600 yards and 42 touchdowns in 1995. The Wildcats were coming off victories over Western Washington and Hardin-Simmons, and the Marauders were no match for Kitna's Wildcats, as they fell 48-7, ending their season with an 11-2 record. Kitna would go on to a successful 14-year career in the NFL, playing for the Seahawks, Lions, Bengals, and Cowboys. In the championship game, Central Washington would become a part of history, becoming the last co-national champions with Finlay because of a bizarre rule in which overtime would only be used in previous playoff rounds, but not in the championship game. After the game, the NAIA would change this rule, cementing this game as the last national championship to ever end in a tie. The postseason would be full of awards for the Marauders, with 13 different Marauders being chosen to the NDCAC All-Conference team. Steve Cluton would be named the most valuable graduating senior while also earning a first-team All-American selection. Napoleon, North Dakota graduate offensive lineman Byron Hoff would earn an all-conference selection, as well as being named as a second-team All-American. The iron leg of Jeremy Polson will also lead to him being selected as a second-team All-American, and quarterback Paul Cronin would be chosen all-conference and as the conference MVP. As often seen in today's football climate, a successful season led to head coach Tom Shea being mentioned in coaching searches, but remained at Mary after withdrawing from the head coach search at Black Hill State. Coming into the 96 season, the question on everyone's mind was who would replace Cronin under center. In the spring of 96, Minot State quarterback Scott Mayer would make a surprising move transferring to Mary, but the signal caller was clear that his preference would be to play wide receiver. He would compete against sophomore Jared Hebers and freshman Chris Schwab. Unfortunately for Mayer, he would suffer a shoulder injury in training camp, and to add insult to injury, the Marauders would lose running back Eric Chin due to legal issues. In their opener against Carroll, the offense would struggle and be shut out in the opener 34-0. They would finish 1-2 in non-conference play. After Herbert started the Carroll game under center, Shea made the switch to Schwab, and Schwab would impress. Behind the strong play of Schwab and a talented freshman class, the Marauders would finish 6-1 in the conference and earn the last playoff spot by finishing the season ranked inside the top 20. Schwab would finish the regular season with 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. Neil McDonald would also put up big numbers with 1,100 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. The Marauders would fall to Sioux Falls in the first round of the playoffs, finishing the season with a 7-4 record. The offseason would once again include rumors about their head football coach. Shea was considered for vacancies at Central Washington and Winona State. Rumors would swirl until May, when Tom Shea resigned from the Marauders to become the defensive coordinator at NCAA Division II program Central Arkansas. Hank Bijou of Dickinson State and Dan Schmecker of Bismarck St. Mary's were considered for the head coaching vacancy, and after Bijou withdrew his name from consideration, the Marauders landed on 36-year-old University of North Dakota defensive coordinator Dale Lennon. This season would also be the first season that the Marauders played their home games at the brand new Bismarck Community Bowl. Although Hegeholz Field will still remain intact, the Marauders will now play their home games off campus and on turf, and with a much larger seating capacity. 1997 was a tough season for first-year head coach Dale Lennon, with only 28 returning players. He would lead the Marauders to a 4-6 overall record. But 1998 would be a season of improvements for the Marauders, with 55 players returning and Lennon with a year under his belt. With Chris Schwab leading the attack, UMary experienced a turnaround that included the typical nail-biter against Dickinson State that ended in a 3-point overtime loss. UMary would also find a new star in Great Falls, Montana freshman running back Brian Kimball. With an offensive line anchored by Granville, North Dakota junior Eric Volk, the Marauders maintained a balanced attack. Schwab would go on to pass Paul Cronin as the UMary all-time passing leader in passing yards and touchdowns this season. And to close out the season, they faced Jamestown in a must-win game. They would defeat the Jimmies in overtime, and with a blowout of South Dakota Tech, they clinched an automatic playoff berth. The Marauders would go on to lose to the Sioux Falls Cougars in the first round of the NAI playoffs, 29-25. It would be a tough game for Schwab, as he finished with 4 interceptions. The offseason would start with a bright spot, as junior lineman Eric Volk would earn first-team All-American honors. And, as has been the recent norm for the University of Mary, they had to once again deal with a successful head football coach being courted by other schools. Head coach Dale Lennon would accept a new job at the University of North Dakota as their head football coach. The Marauders would knock it out of the park by hiring longtime assistant coach Myron Schultz as their new head football coach. Let's now look at players who finished playing prior to the 1999 season and are currently enshrined in the Hall of Fame. Clarence McKinney played for the Marauders from 1991 to 93 at both wide receiver and quarterback. McKinney would later go on to be an assistant football coach at the University of Houston, Texas A&M, and Arizona. Most recently, he served as the head football coach at Texas Southern. Bobby Wagner came to the University of Mary from Modesto Junior College, and in 2 seasons, he carved his name into the record books. Wagner would set single-season records that still stand today in 1993 for rushing yards, points, and touchdowns. His 33 career rushing touchdowns is still a UMary record, and his total yards is second all-time. He also has set the record for the longest kick return, when he returned a kickoff for 99 yards against Western Montana in 93. Bobby Lee currently lives in California and is a pastor. Neil McDonald came to Mary from Modesto Junior College. McDonald was a key receiver for the Marauders in 95 and 96. He remains in the top 10 all-time for marks in receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns. His 1996 season of 79 receptions and 1,208 yards remain as one of the top seasons by a wide receiver in University of Mary history. McDonald is a high school principal and previously coached high school football in California. Excuse me if I get this name wrong, but our next selection is Mike Jaskowski. Mike came from Mary from Pinedale, Wyoming. He played 4 years for the Marauders, being named the captain of the 1991 team that would reach the playoffs for the first time in program history. Mike is top 10 all-time in tackles for losses with 27. Mike would later receive tryouts with multiple NFL teams and play a short stint in the USFL before his career was ended by injury. Mike currently lives in Wyoming and owns an oil consulting company. Paul Cronin came to Mary from Mendocino Junior College and would be the Marauders quarterback in their 1995 magical run. He set a school record with 6 touchdowns in a game versus Jamestown in 1994. Cronin is still top 5 in all-time passing yards and passing touchdowns. Cronin lives in California and has won multiple state championships as a high school football coach and is number 2 all-time in coaching wins in Sonoma County history. Steve Cluton graduated from St. Mary's High School in Bismarck and played for 2 years at the University of Wyoming before transferring to the University of Mary in 1994. He was a team captain both years and had his finest year in 1995 when he registered 117 tackles and was named a first-team All-American and the Marauders' defensive MVP. Cluton currently lives in the Bismarck area and manages an elk ranch. Robert Brusfin graduated from Devils Lake, North Dakota, and was a leader on the 94 team that would win their first ever playoff game. His 255 career tackles still ranks in the Marauders' top 5 all-time. Brusfin would work as an assistant coach with the Marauders for a time and currently lives in Montana and works for U.S. Customs. His son Cameron is currently a linebacker for the Marauders. Jason Aarons graduated from Mandan, North Dakota, and was a standout kicker for the Marauders. He holds UMary records for field goals in a game, recording 4 field goals in one game twice in 1992. He still is in the top 10 all-time for total points with 184. Jason lives in Mandan and is a bank president and is active in multiple community boards. John Ottoman graduated from St. Mary's High School and was a member of the teams that would see great success in the 90s. John was a captain on the 95 team that would advance to the NAIA semifinals. His 24 sacks is still top 5 all time. John lives in Bismarck and is a nurse anesthetist. Thank you for watching the second part of my 4-part series on the University of Marauder Athletics. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel or like me on Facebook at Small Town Sports History.